There's a story about why Missouri is called the Show Me State. The people here are such hard sells, you can't tell them anything. You have to show them. And maybe that's why Missouri shows the rest of the country so little. It doesn't brag. It doesn't put itself on the postcard. Not because there's nothing here. Because the people who live here never needed you to be impressed. Drive across it and you'd swear it was empty. You'd be wrong. Under those fields are 7,500 caves, more than any state but Tennessee. A lake with more shoreline than the coast of California, with a whole town drowned on its floor. A prison once called the bloodiest 47 acres in America. A town so poisoned it was bought, bulldozed, and wiped off the map. None of it makes the highway signs. The people here know every bit of it by heart. And they'll defend this place to anyone who'll listen. Ask where they'd rather live, and most won't even understand the question. We'll get to them. By the end, you'll understand why. Most of the people here stayed. About 6 million live in Missouri, and more than half are packed into 2 cities on opposite edges of the state. Step off the highway between them, and the land goes quiet. 2 million people spread across 99 country counties, in towns that get smaller every year. They don't see that as losing anything. A working family can still own ground of their own here, a stretch of river, woods with no neighbour for miles. That's gone almost everywhere else. The work came out of the ground. Missouri led the country in lead mining for over 100 years, and when the old belt gave out in the 1970s, the families didn't leave. They held on. Today, people pay to scuba dive through the flooded mine under Bonne Terre, 100 feet below the old streets. Out in the country, 100,000 farms still cover 2/3 of the state, most of them family-owned, handed down instead of sold. And whatever the land and the rivers give, ends up on a table. In the Ozarks, supper still comes from close to home. Catfish out of the river, game out of the woods. In Kansas City, the smoke never quite clears. It's the town that took burnt ends, the charred scraps nobody used to want, and turned them into something people line up for. Over in St. Louis, gooey butter cake started the same way. A depression mistake a baker was too broke to throw out. Around here, feeding people is how you tell them they belong. Ask an old-timer in the Ozarks, and they'll tell you their grandmother was born in a town that's underwater now, flooded for the dam in 1931. They were born here, raised here, and most mean to be buried here. They have something money can't buy, and after a while among them, you start to believe it too. You can't see any of that from the highway, so we're heading down into it. The hills, the caves, the old river towns, the valley under the water. By the end, the question we opened with will have answered itself. It starts with the water. Beneath calm water and speeding boats lies a drowned world where old roads, farmsteads, and small settlements still trace the shape of the valley floor. Lake of the Ozarks twists across Missouri like a giant flooded maze, with over 1,100 miles of shoreline, so long that locals brag it rivals the coast of California. Before the water rose, this was a chain of steep valleys and small farms, where families worked isolated hollows tied together by a few dirt roads and the Osage River. When the dam closed, the backed-up river swallowed roads, barns, and graveyards that now rest beneath many feet of water. Divers and long-time locals tell of submerged foundations, old equipment, and other relics still scattered along the lake floor. Some also share eerie tales of underwater church bells and ghostly building shapes that seem to return when the water drops, part of the ghost town stories that grew up around the reservoir. In their place rose something completely different, a boating hotspot where speedboats tear through winding channels that were once dry ground. This isn't just boats and condos, it's potlucks, fish fries, and handed down recipes where fried catfish, beans, cornbread, blackberry desserts and sweet tea bring people together. Around the shoreline, church dinners, fish nights and dockside grills gather neighbours and newcomers at the same tables, slowly turning strangers into familiar faces. The lake's long, branching shape creates tight coves and bluff-lined shores, where sudden storms and heavy boat wakes can turn the water rough in seconds. All of this traces back to one concrete giant that halted the Osage River and rewrote this valley's story, Bagnell Dam. The dam is a half-mile-long concrete wall rising more than 100 feet, with steel floodgates below and cars crossing the roadway on top. Engineers call it a gravity dam because its own weight holds back about 600 billion gallons of water, making it one of the largest privately financed hydroelectric dams in the country. Up here, concrete yields to distant cliffs, where the ruined mansion of Tonka Castle ruins hangs over caves and sinkholes. This crumbling stone shell was meant to be a grand cliff-top mansion inspired by European castles, but a fire left only the broken outline seen today. The name Tonka means laughing waters, referencing the powerful spring that bursts from the hillside below. That spring pours a constant stream of bright blue water into the lake, leading some visitors to joke that the castle overlooks its own private river. Around the ruins, sinkholes, caves, and a natural stone bridge turn the castle grounds into a maze of cliffs and sudden openings. Local guides note that the mansion's first owner never truly lived out his dream, and some visitors swear the ruins feel frozen halfway through moving in. On windy days, broken windows and empty doorways frame views of the lake far below, and kids like to imagine the castle still peeking down to see who is playing in its front yard. After dark, reports of footsteps on the stone paths and whispers near the old water tower give the ruins a ghost story of their own. With winter in full swing, the ruined mansion becomes a backdrop, and the real drama plays out over the dam, where bald eagles line up for their next easy catch. These birds treat the fast water below Bagnell Dam like an all-you-can-eat fish bar, watching from tall trees and then dropping down in a smooth dive to grab dinner off the surface. Each eagle has eyes so sharp it can spot a fish or a duck far below, turning every glide over the lake of the Ozarks into a careful scanning mission. When one eagle finally snags a fish, others may race in to try and steal it, and suddenly the calm sky turns into a wild, flapping food fight. Up close, their big hooked beaks and strong yellow feet look like built-in tools, perfect for snatching slippery fish out of ice-cold water. New viewers might expect a huge movie scream, but a bald eagle's real call is a high, whistling chatter that sounds more like a squeaky laugh than a roar. Juveniles, still brown and patchy, often crowd into the same trees as adults, watching and copying which spots near the dam give them the best chance at a free fish. On a clear winter day, it can feel like the whole sky above the Osage River is busy with these big hunters, drifting and circling as calmly as if they own the air. As their flight path leaves the dam and lake behind, it carries them toward a fading stop on the old highway map, Arlington. This tiny river town once buzzed with Route 66 traffic, its motels, diners and gas pumps feeding long lines of cars rolling just a few feet from front doors. When a new interstate stole the stream of travellers, it lost more than a road. It lost its customers almost at once, and whole businesses felt like someone had hit pause. Empty cabins, quiet motels, and rusting signs now cling to bends in the river, as if the town is still waiting for a crowd that took a faster turn and never came back. Deeper in the Ozarks, Tom sought mountain towers over cliffs and forests, where the rolling hills take on the feel of a small, stony roof of the world. This high point is part of a long-extinct volcanic range, where lava once cooled into hard pink rock that now pokes through the soil like the bones of a very tired giant. The mountain shifts quickly between sun-baked glades and cool, shaded ravines, creating two worlds side by side. Follow the sound along the mountain's edge, and the path ends at a cliff where water drops away at Minasauk Falls. Here, the water doesn't fall in one big sheet. It bounces, slips and splits across ledges and cracks, turning old lava rock into a noisy playground for splashes and sunlight. When the spray settles and the rock begins to steam in the heat, turkey vultures glide overhead on rising air, like lazy kites that never need to land. Up here they hardly flap at all, just spread their long wings and let warm air columns carry them higher and higher. These big birds are nature's clean-up crew, using a super strong sense of smell to find dead animals that many other birds would fly right past. Their heads are bare and bumpy rather than fluffy, which looks odd but keeps them cleaner as they reach well into carcasses for a meal. To cool off in the hot sun, they do something wild. They sometimes pee on their own legs, which makes most kids say yuck, but helps the vulture feel nice and cool. When they feel scared, they may suddenly throw up their last meal to get lighter and escape faster, so that it becomes a smart safety trick instead of just a gross one. Beyond their circling wings waits St Genevieve, a small river town with narrow streets and very old routes. Here, some of the oldest French-style houses in the central United States still stand, built with heavy timber frames and vertical wooden posts set straight into the ground like a stockade. Many homes once looked out toward long, narrow farm strips in the big field by the river, so each family could work its land, reach the water, and keep close to town and church all at once. Catholic bells have rung here for generations, calling people to the same riverside parish, while the flags over the town moved from French to Spanish to American. On some evenings, locals still talk about candlelight processions and say they can almost picture old traders in wool coats stepping off wooden boats to join the line. French place names, old recipes, and annual religious events still tie the town to a time when the Mississippi was the main highway and New Orleans felt closer than nearby cities. Beyond this quiet river town, the hills hide a stranger scene at Elephant Rocks, with giant granite elephants standing like a frozen parade across the land. These boulders are made of pink granite, so old it was cooling under volcanoes long before any dinosaurs, trees, or even fish ever swam in the sea. Over an unthinkably long time, softer rock around them wore away, leaving these round giants teetering on slopes as if someone rolled them into place for fun. Some of the blocks are as big as small houses, yet kids clamber over them, like a playground, walking along the train of elephants from head to tail. Long ago, quarry workers carved chunks from this same rock for buildings and train bridges, so the stone that looks like a toy herd also helped hold up real tracks and towns. On foggy mornings, people joke that the boulders look ready to wake up and shuffle off into the woods, one slow stone step at a time. As the parade ends, another kind of wonder begins, in the cool blue water and towering red mill of Alley Spring. Here, water bursts out of the ground in a pool so bright and clear that it looks like someone spilled a giant bucket of turquoise paint at the base of the hill. That cold spring once turned heavy, mill wheels inside the tall red alley mill, grinding local farmers' grain into flour while mist blew through its open windows. Today, the mill no longer works, but its empty machinery still fills the rooms, letting visitors imagine the clatter of belts and gears every time the spring's water rushes past the foundation. Downriver, the gentle sound of the spring slowly gives way to the memory of crushers, hoists and smelters in a place once roaring with work, Missouri Mines State Historic Site. The entire hills were hollowed out for lead, and people built their lives around a maze of shafts and tunnels where the sun never reached, and the air tasted like metal and dust. Miners spent long hours far underground, always listening for the tiny crack of shifting rock, because one wrong blast or weak support could turn an ordinary shift into a sudden cave-in. Where the concrete ends, a different kind of danger begins, along the cliffy paths and tight ridges of Devil's Backbone wilderness. The Ozarks here rise and fall so sharply that one skinny ridge can drop into forested hollows on both sides, like a long bony spine holding up the woods. These knife-edge high points are leftovers of a worn-down plateau, carved by water into steep slopes, rocky ledges, and side valleys that can turn even a simple walk into a twisty puzzle. In some places, the trail rides right on top of the ridge, with drops on either side, so on windy days, hikers joke that they feel like they are balancing on the back of a sleeping dragon. Down below, shaded hollows stay cool and damp, hiding mossy rocks, fallen logs, and surprise springs that show up after big rains. Because the ground is so folded and broken, voices fade fast, and hikers can vanish behind a single ridge, leaving the woods feeling empty and watched. In that kind of quiet, it's easy to picture unseen faces in the brush, and sometimes those faces are real, belonging to shy bobcats slipping along the same ridges and hollows without a sound. About twice the size of a house cat, with a short bob tail and ear tips like tiny paintbrushes, this hunter follows one simple rule: stay out of sight. Around the area, they are most active at dawn and dusk, using thick brush and rocky ledges along the ridgetops as perfect launch points for quick ambushes. Around these slopes, a bobcat can melt into rock and bramble, holding so still that even birds relax, right up until the moment it bursts toward a rabbit, mouse, or unlucky squirrel. Each animal keeps mostly to its own route, padding quiet loops through the woods and leaving scent marks like tiny, no trespassing signs that only other bobcats can read. They leave almost nothing behind, just faint tracks and a few scat piles, so most hikers pass through their hunting ground without ever knowing a wild cat was close by. Out here, the bobcat may not be the largest predator, yet it is quick, silent, and patient enough to feel like the forest's sneaky hall monitor, watching who moves, who hides, and who freezes. And once darkness settles and even this cat lies low, a different watcher takes the night shift, a barred owl, sending rolling calls through the valleys like a voice built just for the dark. It often calls, "Who cooks for you?" into the trees, a booming question that can bounce from ridge to ridge, like someone shouting across a giant empty room. Big front-facing eyes pack in light so well that this bird can spot a tiny movement on the ground when most people can barely see their own hands. Soft, frayed feathers along its wings work like built-in silencers, letting it glide over a branch, snatch a small animal, and vanish again without so much as a rustle. These owls often stick to the same patch of woods, nesting in old tree holes and loudly scolding raccoons, people, or anything else that wanders too close to their home tree. From high perches, they hunt by sitting and waiting, then dropping down on mice, frogs, snakes, and sometimes even other birds that never hear those wings until it is too late. On some nights, more than one bird calls back and forth, turning the dark into what sounds like a very serious, very loud argument drifting between the trunks. Even while those hoots roll through the forest, another sound joins the chorus, the sharp, drum-like pounding of a beak on wood as a pileated woodpecker gets to work on its next meal. Almost as big as a crow and crowned with a bright red crest, this bird hits dead trunks like a living jackhammer, chiseling long, rectangular holes to rip open ant nests hidden in the wood. Its head and beak move like a single stiff hammer, letting it hammer into rotten timber without shaking its own brain loose. Behind that beak is a tongue so long it anchors within the skull and loops back over the top, ready to shoot into cracks and pull out ants and beetle grubs. In mature hardwood forests, it spends most of its time on dead or dying trees, using old trunks as food stations and drumming posts while leaving healthy wood mostly alone. Once abandoned, a nesting cavity quickly fills with new tenants: owls, wood ducks, bats, flying squirrels, and many more moving into these ready-made tree apartments. The call is a fast, laughing rattle that races through the trees, and many people think this wild voice helped inspire the laugh of a very famous cartoon woodpecker. On misty mornings, a flash of red and bold black and white wings can suddenly appear on a distant stump, then vanish just as quickly behind another trunk. The trail from this busy woodpecker leads far from these trees to Times Beach, a town emptied by poison and slowly wrapped in new forest. Once a dusty Route 66 hamlet, residents paid a man to spray their roads with waste oil to stop the dust, never guessing the oil carried a deadly contaminant. For years, children played and families breathed that invisible poison, while the substance quietly lodged in yards and doorsteps. A flood moved the toxin from road to backyard, and the danger finally showed itself in ways no one could ignore. The federal government bought every home, razed the houses, and flattened streets until the town's footprints were gone. Now trees hide where porches stood, and the place reads like a nature film. Forest reclaiming an emptied human story. Hikers who leave the quiet woods of Times Beach can feel the difference instantly at Johnson's Shut-ins, where boiling riffles and basalt boulders dominate the scene. Here, an Ozark river is squeezed through iron-hard volcanic rock, folding water into chutes, slides, and glassy pools that look carved by a giant hand. The rock underfoot is some of Missouri's oldest exposed bedrock, usually hidden elsewhere, so every splash reveals layers harder than most rivers can wear away. For generations, people treated the shut-ins like a natural water park, slipping and whooping through the channels on hot afternoons. Above the park once sat a huge man-made tank, and one black night it failed. A wall of water thundered down the mountain and hit the caretaker's house in its path. The flood scrubbed bare a stretch of bedrock that now shines where the river runs, and on those sun-warmed stones you can spot bright eastern collared lizards soaking up the heat. These lizards sit flat and still, like tiny sun panels, turning the volcanic rock into their personal hotspot to warm up fast. Their colours flash like a toy car, bold greens and yellows that stand out against black basalt. They're fearless climbers, sprinting up steep rock faces and perching on ledges where most predators can't follow. At Johnson's shut-ins, they mainly hunt insects and small critters. Sometimes they grab plant bits when food is scarce. Males puff up and bob their heads in a noisy, show-off way to win mates and say, "This rock is mine." Young lizards grow quickly and scatter far, because staying put on one rock means tempting a hungry bird. If you want a quick thrill, spot one basking, freeze, then watch it wave its tail in a quick, cat-like motion before snapping at prey. Not far away sits Red Oak 2, an art-made ghost town where rusting cars, folk art and rescued buildings preserve pieces of Davis's hometown and other towns that disappeared. Lowell Davis was a folk artist who grew up in a small farming community that was quietly dying around him, and instead of mourning it, he started hauling old buildings in, piece by piece. He gathered the leftover bones of vanishing rural America, a general store, a filling station, old houses, and stood them back up in an open field like a memory you can walk through. Most people handle missing home by going for a visit. Davis simply built the whole place over again from scratch. Davis moved a real cemetery with original tombstones, and he added colourful folk art sculptures nearby that pop against the grey stones. Many visitors say the place feels like a roadside dream, where rusting cars and painted signs tell stories of small-town life that's hard to find anymore. The town's sidewalk of vanished America leads to Hannibal, a weathered Mississippi town where bluffs, steamboats and river mist preserve the setting of Mark Twain's tales. In the 1800s, steamboats roared up and down this river, carrying cotton, pigs, mail and people, helping make this river town a noisy port where the whole town woke to whistle blasts. A single steamboat could burn 1 to 2 tons of wood in one day, sending thick smoke curling over brick storefronts and limestone bluffs. Massive floods swept through Hannibal, swallowing streets and forcing families to climb onto rooftops, while water rushed only feet below their windows. Fishermen pulled catfish from the same muddy river bends, where steamboats once tied up to load cargo. Twain and boys who grew up on these streets played in caves and on sandbars, then sat on porches and turned their real adventures into stories that became Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain left Hannibal at 18, but he never stopped writing about the river, the fog, and the steamboat pilots who mastered the current. Even today, Thick river fog rolls in at dawn, wrapping the bluffs and rooftops the same way fog once hid approaching steamboats from the town. Up from the river's mist, the Mark Twain Memorial Lighthouse sits high on a hill, shining its light across the town and the waters below. Yet this is a lighthouse, with no ocean for hundreds of miles, no harbour, and no ship has ever needed its light, built only to honour the writer who made Hannibal famous. Built from local limestone that matches the surrounding bluffs, the lighthouse has a natural, weathered look. Rising 75 feet tall, the white beacon tower is topped with a red-roofed cupola that stands out against the hillside sky. From its overlook, those same backwaters stretch below, where great blue herons spread their wings and drop into the water with silent grace. Along the muddy edges near Hannibal, these birds hunt by standing so still they might pass for driftwood, waiting for one careless fish to come just a little too close. When that moment comes, the long neck snaps forward like a thrown spear, and a fish that thought it was safe ends up clamped in a bright yellow bill. Up close, each bird steps on tall, thin legs, placing its feet so gently that the water barely stirs, as if it doesn't want the river to notice it is there. In the air, it pulls its neck into an S-curve and beats broad wings that carry it high above the Mississippi, gliding between sandbars and tree-lined banks. Around their nesting trees, they gather in loose colonies, stacking big stick nests in the crowns, so that some branches hold platforms that look almost big enough to hold a child's bike. Young birds start out wobbly and noisy, begging for food with rough calls, while they secretly practice the slow steps and sudden jabs they'll use along this river as adults. On misty mornings, a single heron can appear out of a grey sheet of fog like a tall blue shadow, then lift off with a harsh croak if a boat drifts too near. While these tall hunters rule the river's edge, a very different waterworld waits underground in Bonne Terre Mine, where old tunnels now hold a sunken lake. This mine once pulled so much lead that it helped feed batteries, bullets and pipes across the country, all dug out by people who spent their days far below sunlight. When the pumps finally stopped and groundwater rushed back in, whole levels flooded, turning haul roads and rail lines into underwater streets inside a billion-gallon lake. Today, boats and scuba divers glide where oar carts used to rattle, moving through clear water past elevator shafts, staircases, and rusting machines left where miners walked away. Some chambers resemble underground cathedrals, where stone pillars climb from flooded floors to mountain-like ceilings. When visitors ride the elevator back into daylight, the trail of Missouri's past leaves this underground maze and turns toward the old wooden streets of Arrow Rock. This small river village once sat on a busy migration route, where wagon caravans rolled in to load up on flour, tools, whiskey, and news before pushing west toward the frontier. On crowded days, wagons could pack the dirt road so tightly that the line of wheels and oxen must have looked like one long wooden snake inching through town. Inside roadside taverns, travellers crowded long tables, swapping trail stories and warnings about river crossings, bad water, and distant trading posts. The old J. Houston Tavern, Missouri's oldest continuously operating restaurant, still serves fried chicken and other comfort dishes in a creaky 1800s dining room. Wooden porches and boardwalks still map the old street grid, so passing weathered storefronts feels like entering a paused wagon town. The same traders who once stocked up here pushed on toward a booming river city where packed streets and tall brick blocks waited in St. Louis. Along the riverfront, so many wagons, barrels, and steamboats crowded the levee that the shoreline could seem like a single clanking machine built from wood, iron, and shouting voices. Just behind those docks, brick rows filled with newcomers, where bakers, butchers, and bar owners worked side by side while different languages spilled out of almost every doorway. The city even invented some of its own comfort food by accident: toasted ravioli from the Italian kitchens of the Hill, and gooey butter cake from a baker's botched recipe. Beneath their feet, cool stone caves and tunnels cradled long lines of beer barrels, a hidden world of lagering cellars that once helped make this city famous for its brew. When summer storms rolled in, lightning could catch church domes, glass towers, and old factory stacks in a single flash, showing the river city's layers in one bright snapshot. Around the riverfront, people still share spooky stories about odd lights in the fog, distant horns with no boat in sight, and warehouse footsteps that keep old working days alive in imagination. From river cobblestones to factory chimneys, every line on this shore seems to point toward one soaring curve of steel, the Gateway Arch. This giant stainless steel arc is shaped so precisely that it stands just as wide as it is tall, yet almost every visitor swears it looks far taller than any number on a sign could explain. After winning the design competition, the congratulatory telegram went to the architect's father by mistake, and the family toasted the wrong genius for days. Engineers warned that raising the two leaning steel legs could kill over a dozen workers, yet the monument rose without a single fatality. Inside, small tram pods click and sway as they climb through the hollow leg, part elevator and part Ferris wheel, carrying visitors up the curve like marbles rolling through a giant metal spine. Riding these little trams to the top is a rite of passage for many St. Louis kids, while the riverfront below becomes one of the city's biggest gathering places each 4th of July. At the top, narrow windows let you lean close to the glass, while the city, river, bridges, and train yards flatten into a tiny toy set spread hundreds of feet below your shoes. In strong winds, the arch can sway just enough that some riders feel their stomachs flutter, while the flexible steel skin quietly bends the way the designers planned. Under all that metal, a museum traces stories of wagon trains, steamboats and families heading west, turning this huge silver shape into a giant doorway sketched across the sky. A short distance away, another kind of art glows indoors at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis, where stone walls and domes hold one of the world's largest mosaic collections. From outside, the cathedral looks almost like a stone fortress that dressed up with huge arches, carved doors and twin towers that seem to stand guard over the street. The front dome wears green tiles that catch light in shifting ways, so on some days it feels as if the whole building has its own slow-changing mood ring sitting on top. Up close, the main entrance becomes a kind of stone puzzle, packed with carvings of leaves, faces, and symbols that many people walk past without ever really seeing. Beyond the stone and glass, metal and motion dominate the horizon on the Martin Luther King Bridge. This long steel truss feels like a sideways skyscraper laid flat over the water, its crisscross beams turning car traffic into a thin, rattling stream between two states. On foggy mornings, the bridge can seem to hang in mid-air, with only the closest beams in view, so the far end looks less like a sure exit and more like a guessed-at destination. After dark, red and white lights pick out the truss, while factory stacks and rail yards glow nearby, giving the span the feel of a metal spine plugged straight into the city's industrial side. Yet only a short drive west, steel and concrete surrender to trees, lakes and open lawns in the broad green expanse of Forest Park. Nearly 500 acres larger than Central Park, it holds museums, sports fields, golf courses and pockets of wildlife under the same canopy. For many St. Louis families, it's a shared backyard where free museums, the zoo and summer shows become part of growing up. Near its centre, the Emerson Grand Basin unfolds like a long mirror at the foot of a hill, bordered by rows of fountains dating to a World's Fair. During fairs, crowds packed these slopes so tightly that it really did feel as if the whole world had squeezed onto this one patch of grass to stare at lights, fireworks, and distant inventions. Festivals like the African Arts Festival bring food stalls, drummers, dancers, and crafts to the park, making a simple walk past the fountains feel like a tour of the city's many cultures. Stories say the ice cream cone, a hot dog, and a parade of other snacks debuted here, but the fair's real feat was putting them on everyone's menu. Far downstream from these fountains and hills, the Mississippi passes a cluster of historic streets and floodwalls gathered around Kimmswick. This little town clings beside tall river bluffs, where old frame houses and brick shops stand close enough that past high water has pushed right up toward porches and doors. On quiet days, the streets turn into an open-air attic lined with antique shops, pie-scented diners and windows packed with salvaged treasures. After dark, floodwall and levee paths sit steps from rocking chairs and porch swings, where crickets, barge horns, and the current share the same night. Past the last porch lights, 2-lane roads thin out toward Phelps, a quiet Route 66 stop where old concrete and fading signs remember busier days. Here, leaning sheds and cracked driveways line a strip of former highway that once carried vacation caravans, freight trucks, and long chains of family cars chasing the west. A restored schoolhouse and a handful of scattered buildings still face the pavement, so the place feels less like a town that died and more like one that drifted out of time. In daylight, weeds crowd the shoulders and quiet mailboxes lean over the ditch, while distant grain trucks and trains hint that long-distance travel has simply moved to faster routes. What began as a lonely ribbon of road in Phelps gradually tightens into city blocks and stone terraces, gathered high above the Missouri River in Jefferson City. This is a capital where the biggest factory is a domed building full of offices and hearing rooms, a place where words on paper quietly steer life in every corner of the state. Down the slope, the riverfront once funneled workers to both the hilltop of Suits and the prison below, two neighbours that kept the town's paychecks flowing for generations. Families here often counted years in shifts, with some relatives drafting rules by day, while others walked tiers and locked cell doors by night. Kids grew up hearing that stacks of license plates and other prison-made goods sat just a short walk away, hidden behind walls lined with razor wire and guard towers. On game nights and holidays, parade drums, stadium cheers, and church bells carried over rooftops, even as loudspeakers crackled and heavy doors slammed inside the nearby yard. Guides now like to point out how few places put state power and punishment so close together, with the Capitol dome and old cell blocks sharing the same high bluff above the river. Between the Capitol dome and the river, the last major stop on the bluff is not a museum or a mall, but the long, fortress-like face of the Missouri State Penitentiary. For generations, it was the oldest continually operating prison west of the Mississippi, a stone maze of cell blocks so harsh that magazines once branded it the bloodiest 47 acres in America. Inside those walls, James Earl Ray escaped his sentence and later assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., linking the prison to one of the nation's darkest chapters. Guides now speak of riots, lockdowns, and long nights when the tiers shook with shouting, making the place feel less like one building and more like a hard little city locked behind walls. Walk the cold corridors today, and the empty ranges still seem to hold their breath, as if the prison hasn't quite accepted that the guards, inmates, and daily grind are gone. One way along the hill ends in locked doors and towers. Another climbs past bronze figures and carved stone toward the Missouri State Capitol. Up close, the building feels less like an office block and more like a marble cliff, a green dome rising above ranks of statues, columns, and long staircases stacked over the river valley. High on the roof, a bronze Ceres, Roman goddess of agriculture, keeps watch, so a symbol of farm fields literally sits above the rooms where the state's laws are made. Inside, polished stone floors and painted ceilings turn the halls into part courthouse, part gallery, with Benton murals and other artwork slipped into almost every turn. On busy days, the front steps work like a giant porch for civic life, packed with protesters, school kids on tours, and camera crews all aiming at the same tall doors. Late at night, the dome can glow over a river that seems calm and black, even while debates and deal-making continue under that same green roof. Office legends tell of footsteps or murmurs in empty corridors, fueled by the idea that decades of speeches, secrets and nerves still hang in the air after everyone goes home. For all its marble and microphones, though, the Capitol still rests on the same Missouri stone as every farmhouse and crossroads town spread out beyond the bluff. Southward, that stone drops into the Ozarks and breaks open into a very different kind of grand room, the massive underground chambers and shafts of Marvel Cave. The first chamber is so huge that guides liken it to an upside-down skyscraper carved out of rock, a space where tour lights barely touch the ceiling and shouted words vanish into the dark. Drop by drop, water did the carving, dissolving limestone into tunnels and pits until the hills became a honeycomb of rooms, ledges, and dripping drops. Early visitors reached that room by riding down a narrow entrance shaft in a mining bucket, swinging over a long fall that felt less like a tour and more like being swallowed by the hill itself. Around here, the tiny riverside cluster called Garber began to thin out too, one more Ozark dot that seemed to drift toward the edge of the map. Steep wooded hills pressing close on the few back roads that remain, so headlights slip into the trees almost as soon as they leave the last porch or mailbox. Nearby creek banks hold cabins, stone steps and worn foundations lingering as fossils of early camps, fishing lodges and roadside resorts. Out along the Mother Road, Spencer keeps the mood going, its restored station and roadside row holding a quiet slice of classic highway America. Old fuel pumps, tall glass windows and brick fronts sit so neatly in place that the block feels like a movie set, just waiting for a line of chrome-bumpered cars to roll in. Right in front runs one of Missouri's few untouched sections of original Route 66 pavement, a short strip of worn concrete where tyres once rattled west toward desert skies and ocean air. Photographers and road trippers turn the empty porch and gas island into a stage, posing under faded neon that once sold soda, tyres and oil. Locals say the only rush hour now is when classic cars or motorcycle packs roar through in a burst of colour and chrome that for a few minutes makes the place look busy again. When the engines fade, the little row slips back into careful stillness, a stubborn monument to a road the country fell in love with and then steered away from. 'Cause 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 The scattered cars that pause in Spencer are just a trickle from a much larger current of traffic, and tunes that pools in Kansas City's rail yards and music districts. Built around tracks and horns, the city was stitched together by freight cars and the steady rhythm of passing trains. As railroads made Kansas City a crossroads, its nights filled with other traffic, saxophones, trumpets, and pianos racing through loose rule-bending jazz. In smoky clubs, songs ran so long that sunrise often came before the last chorus, as local horn players drove jazz into a wilder, hard-swinging form. Outside those doors, another obsession rolls low and slow, as barbecue pits send up steady, hickory smoke, and locals argue for years over which block hides the best ribs or burnt ends. The city is known for fountains rivaling Rome, boulevards rivaling Paris, and traffic circles built for decoration, not just traffic. Whether or not the claims hold, water spills from plazas, parks, and medians, turning errands into small encounters with moving water. On hot summer evenings, kids, commuters, and clubgoers drift past pools and jets, where spray hisses with train whistles and basement drum beats. Beyond the trains, fountains, and club lights, a single column of stone stands watch on the skyline, marking the spot of the National World War I Museum and Memorial. This tall tower crowns the only place in the country devoted entirely to the First Global War, a conflict once sold as the war to end all wars, and then overshadowed by the next one. To reach the main exhibits, visitors walk across a clear glass bridge, and beneath that floor stretches a glowing field of 9,000 red poppies that looks almost like fire held in place. Each poppy stands in for 1,000 lives lost, so a few quiet steps across that field add up in the mind to millions of stories that never came home. Around that bridge, the museum holds letters, uniforms, and battered weapons, yet many visitors say the simple act of walking above those flowers hits harder than any display case. Out on the terrace, carved guardian figures flank the limestone shaft, while a flame-like glow from the tower ties Kansas City's daily life to trenches and battlefields half a world away. On another nearby hill, the scout statue holds its pose in bronze, horse and rider both turned toward the city, as if tracking every change on the streets below. The figure shows a Sioux scout leaning forward in the saddle, shading his eyes as if still scanning the river valleys and rail lines of the crossroads. People treat it as both lookout and mirror. Couples climb for skyline photos, runners and dog walkers pass at dusk, and many say the city doesn't feel like home until it appears. When city lights begin to flicker on, old roadside signs farther south still whisper the same promise: cool air and neon colours inside Merrimack Caverns. Drivers used to follow hand-painted barn roofs for hours, watching it appear again and again until the cave felt less like a stop and more like a dare. Inside, guides turn a huge chamber into a kind of theatre, shining coloured lights on stone curtains, while music plays so the cave walls seem to move with the sound. Local guides love to point out a tall, flat rock they say Jesse James once hid behind, and whether or not he truly did, kids still lower their voices there as if the outlaw might be listening. The cave became a star of roadside showmanship, with billboards promising mystery, cool air, and the world's biggest this or that, all to pull families off the highway for one more stop. Before long, those cave brochures crumpled on the dashboard give way to hand-painted signs, corner squares, and movie houses in Carthage. This small town once watched Route 66 glide right past its courthouse square, so today many brick walls and neon signs feel like props that never got taken down after the show. On busy weekends, classic cars rumble past old stations and shop fronts, turning regular streets into a slow-moving car museum you can walk through for free. Some diners still pour coffee into heavy mugs at counters along the route, so stepping inside can feel like walking straight into a family photo from a road trip long ago. Locals tell stories about travellers who stopped for pie and ended up buying tired motels or theatres, slowly bringing their neon back to life, one buzzing tube at a time. Painted signs on brick, arrows for motels, fading soda ads and old roadside mascots now act like protected characters in a living cartoon strip along the highway. Kids growing up here learn to notice which signs are original, which ones were restored, and which glowing pieces were rescued from other Route 66 towns that weren't so careful. Mile by mile, old motels and drive-ins thin out, and billboards for concerts, lectures, and college move-in weekends grow thicker as the route closes into Columbia. This is a classic college town, through and through, the kind of place that swells with students in the fall and then quietly exhales them every summer, like a slow, dependable tide. On certain nights downtown, 3 lives overlap: a band shaking a basement bar, a poetry reading upstairs, and a student calling home on the sidewalk. Around the downtown brick blocks, bikes, scooters and backpacks weave past old houses and late-night coffee shops. Locals say the parking lots mark the seasons, packed at move-in, empty at winter break, and full again when the first warm week hits. Beneath the student noise lies a city of limestone and river-cut hills, where crickets and campus bells can be heard in the same 10-minute walk. Every fall, the town spikes with thousands of new faces, turning errands into a parade of majors, clubs and big plans. Big events like True False Film Fest, Roots and Blues, and Unbound Book Festival turn this small city into a regular arts stage, with locals volunteering, hosting guests and filling theatres. Newsrooms and campus studios glow as late as pizza shops, where journalism students cover everything from farm bills to protests while peers choose majors. Hilltop trails, old neighbourhoods, and constant campus chatter make Columbia an unofficial capital of central Missouri ideas, where people come to argue, create, and test what's next. All those threads, city streets, student rituals, and non-stop news and research converge just blocks away at the University of Missouri, better known as Mizzou. This is the state's oldest public university, yet most people spot it first by a row of 6 stone columns on the quad, the ribs of a vanished hall that burned down and left its bones behind. Some nights, reporters move from quiet classrooms to buzzing control rooms, running live storm and election coverage, before heading back to finish homework. Nearby, other buildings glow late as engineering teams test prototypes, health researchers pore over images, and music majors rehearse until the cleaning crews start stacking chairs. Campus rituals stretch from roaring football crowds to quieter habits, like students rubbing a bronze nose for luck before exams, worn smooth enough to replace. Even a simple walk to class turns into a time jump, with old brick halls lining up beside glass-walled research centres, past and future squeezed into a few hundred feet of sidewalk. The farther you roll from cheers and classroom lights, the more the road feels like yesterday's America, especially in quiet pockets like Paris Springs along old Route 66. Here, whole dreams once rested on a few pumps and a glowing sign, fading as traffic shifted to newer routes. Just off the main pavement, scraps of the old highway still lie in the weeds, their cracked stripes fading into driveways, fields, and dead-end fences. Once, drivers timed their day around this spot: gas at the junction, a meal, maybe a visit to the water, and now most rush past on faster roads without realising they've skipped an entire town. After dark, the silence feels like a travel film, stuck on pause, the cars gone, the neon dark, but the stage set still standing along the shoulder. Gay Parita Sinclair Station is a bright exception, a cottage-style gas stop filled with old pumps and signs that turns the quiet bend into a Route 66 postcard. A few miles down the line, Halltown takes that nostalgia even further, lining the road with old storefronts and gas pumps that look ready for customers who never quite arrive. This town once called itself the antique capital of the United States, with buildings packed wall to wall, with signs, dishes, toys, and tools from across the century. As faster highways drew traffic away, the shops emptied, and the town became a fading antique, while cars rushed past on bigger roads. Faded hand-painted boards still hang over porches, and gas station awnings still push out over gravel lots like stage sets waiting for a cast of travellers that never got called back. After a few more bends, the gas pumps and porches are gone, replaced by fence lines, cattle ponds, and narrow lanes that slip toward Almartha's quiet hills. This little place is so small you could miss it with a quick blink, yet it stretches out in dirt roads, shared mailboxes, and farm dogs that treat every passing car like a headline. Old houses sag toward their porches, tin roofs rattle in storms, and front yards double as repair shops and parking lots for tractors that haven't moved in weeks. The calm out here is so complete that it's a shock to remember the same region also hosts Branson, where buses, spotlights and music crowds churn almost every night. This quiet stop turned into one of America's busiest family destinations, packing over live shows and dozens of theatres into a few miles. Evenings bring slow traffic past giant billboards for country bands, magicians, tribute acts and comedy shows starting minutes apart. Resorts hide up side roads in the trees, with cabins, water parks and mini-golf packed so tightly that some visitors park once and barely surface for days. The next stop barely needs a billboard, because Silver Dollar City announces itself with smokestacks, roller coaster screams, and a sign pointing down into the cave underneath it all. It grew from a single cave, and Marvel Cave still runs beneath every ride and shop. One ticket gets you a coaster and a 300-foot underground tour. Inside, over 100 craftspeople blow glass, hammer iron, and pull candy in open workshops all day, turning old-fashioned into a working production floor you can watch up close. Each autumn, the Harvest Festival turns the place into a pumpkin and wood smoke rush, with over 20,000 carved pumpkins, seasonal food, and non-stop craft demos. Families come back year after year for the same skillets, cinnamon bread and candy. Away from the roller coasters, the road runs straight into a villa, a tiny place of empty shops and ageing farmhouses that still sit right on old Route 66. In this corner of Missouri, a villa openly calls itself a living ghost town, where porch lights glow at dusk beside vacant, boarded-up buildings. The main strip feels frozen in time. Faded signs, tired brick fronts, sagging roofs, and the highway now carries more people past the town than into it. Mailboxes and a few parked trucks show that people still live here, but the long gaps between houses make a single passing semi sound like the day's big event. Wind does most of the work, slamming loose screen doors, rattling metal awnings, and shaking weeds that push up through cracked sidewalks where shoppers once stood in line. After dark, headlights slide over empty windows and half-used buildings, and the whole place feels like it's quietly watching the traffic that no longer stops. It is one of many towns along the route that never died, but slowly faded, kept alive by a handful of residents after traffic, and business moved elsewhere. Farther on, the empty windows of a villa give way to boat trailers, misty coves, and back roads that dead end at the water's edge near Blue Eye. This tiny town sits where Ozark hills drop straight into a lake, with cabins and small resorts so close to the water that a few steps from the porch can put you on a dock. Many rentals and homes hug narrow roads that twist along the shore, so even a simple grocery run can mean winding through trees and blind curves before you ever see a main highway. Some visitors return year after year, docking at the same slip and fishing the same rocky points until this corner of the lake feels like a second hometown. These narrow inlets feed into Table Rock Lake, a reservoir created by a concrete dam that transformed winding river valleys into a playground for boaters and anglers. When the river was dammed, water backed up nearly 80 miles, flooding farm roads and hollows, and turning them into lake arms where people ski, fish and float instead of plough. Towns around the shore shifted their focus, swapping some grain bins and pasture gates for marinas, bait shops, campgrounds and resorts that fill as soon as warm weather hits. On busy summer days, the lake fills with boats, base boats racing out at dawn, pontoons and ski boats taking over by midday, and evening cruisers gliding past cabin lights on the hills. Beneath the boat traffic, flooded stumps, rock ledges, and brush piles turn the old valley into a fish-filled maze, making some coves closely guarded secrets among anglers. Even calm mornings feel staged here. Houseboats sitting still in clear water, a few early lines hitting the surface, and the faint sound of an engine starting somewhere across the lake. All that surface commotion and shiny fish near the top don't just pull in people, they also attract sharp-eyed hunters from the sky that know exactly what a busy lake means at mealtime. Soon ospreys appear above the coves, patrolling Table Rock's clear water and steep shorelines, hovering briefly before plunging at the flash of a fish below. Just before hitting the water, an osprey closes its nostrils so it can punch straight through the surface without taking in a noseful of water. Its feet are built for the catch, with a toe that can swivel and rough spiny pads, so even a wet twisting fish gets grabbed and locked in like it's stuck to Velcro. They can rotate their outer toe to put 2 toes in front and 2 behind, giving them an even firmer grip on slippery prey. As it lifts off, it spins the fish to face forward, turning the catch into an arrow-shaped load that cuts cleanly through the air. In the last century, a powerful poison in the food chain made osprey eggs so thin they often broke, and their numbers crashed across much of North America. After that chemical was banned and slowly left the water and the fish, these fish hawks returned, showing up again over reservoirs and rivers, as if they had only taken a long, risky vacation. That single bird over the lake feels wild and sure of its place, even while nearby towns such as Jerome gently crumble along their empty main streets. It grew where trains and old highways once crossed, so its tired storefronts and fading signs feel like pieces from a time when every whistle and truck horn brought fresh business. The tracks still run and the road still passes by, but the quiet station and shuttered shops leave old walls, leaning porches, and worn signs where people once lined up for tickets, gas or pie. Leaving this behind, only mailboxes, gravel lanes, and a small cluster of homes mark Heatonville on old Route 66. This place is so small. Drivers joke you can miss it in the time it takes to blink, yet it once grew up around the highway and now holds a few rare Route 66 leftovers in the middle of farm country. Today, only a handful of houses, a church and a few weathered buildings remain, including an abandoned stone garage and gas station still waiting for a car that will never come. A little farther off the beaten track, the pavement drifts away from even these last houses and heads toward calmer water and open land around places like Hubler Lake. This small lake has no marinas or roller coasters, just a simple bank, a basic access point, and water that most days sees more birds and fish than people. On calm mornings, the surface can lie so smooth that one tossed stone sends ripples all the way across, and for a moment, it feels like the whole lake is paying attention. Around the edges, trees, brush and reeds are thick enough that life is heard before it's seen. Splashes, frog calls and rustling grass. Without crowds, a bird wading into the shallows becomes the main event, nearly child tall and bright white against dark water. Those tall white hunters along the weedy margins are great white egrets, slow-moving stalkers that turn these still, shallow edges into patient fishing lines of their own. To eat at Hubler Lake, an egret may stand so still it looks fake. Then, in an instant, its neck fires forward and the bill hits the water like a tiny spear. In clear, shallow water, it walks on tiptoe, lifting each foot straight up and setting it down gently so it doesn't spook the very fish or frog it wants to grab. At one time, people hunted egrets for their fancy back feathers, and their numbers fell in many places until new laws finally protected them. Because of that protection, spotting a great egret at a quiet little lake like this is now a small, bright success story. They often share the shore with herons and other wading birds, each one working its own strip of mud, like cooks at different stations in one big kitchen. When an egret takes off, it opens wide white wings and lifts away in slow motion, a bit like a sheep caught by the wind that suddenly learns how to fly. Once it glides off toward another wet corner of the countryside, the lake sound drops back to frogs, insects, and the faint rumble of far-off trucks. Following the narrow blacktop from the water leads straight into Plano, a faded crossroads of hills, barns, and slow country roads. Old stories say a farmer painted a rusty tractor bright blue and parked it on a rise so travellers would know they'd reached town, and some still use it as a ghost landmark. Many ageing farm sheds here lean at odd angles, with missing boards that let sunlight stripe through like bright ladders on the dust. Tyres hum over chipped pavement toward rescue, a place where open fields widen and only faint signs of older farm life hang on. Folks around here like to say the town's name came from a store that rescued people from long drives for bread and nails, a joke that stuck so well it ended up in everyday talk. On clear nights, torchlights sit so far apart that the sky feels huge, and kids can trace star shapes right between the dark lines of barns and grain bins. After soaking rains, low spots in the fields can hold shallow water, and every so often shorebirds drop in to feed, turning plain crop rows into a quick, noisy rest stop. Gravel crunches under the tyres, then the fields stop, and Spile Lake appears ahead. A small, still fishing lake, wrapped in trees and silence. Anglers say this quiet lake fishes bigger than it looks, with calm water that can suddenly burst into rings when bass smash bait near the surface. On windless days, the lake turns flat as glass, doubling every tree so cleanly that one duck cutting across it looks like it's slicing the whole scene in two. In the shaded corners, fallen branches and cooler water gather small fish in tight schools, pulling in herons and egrets that creep along the edge in slow, careful steps. Once the sun goes down, frogs and insects take over, and the steady chorus around this little lake can sound louder than any town miles up the highway. With the first warm light, logs and mats of plants near shore start to fill with painted turtles, each one climbing up to bask and turning the quiet water into a slow sunlit parade. Their shells look dull from far away, but up close the edges glow with red and yellow lines, as if someone traced them carefully with bright markers. Here they often stack on one another like living pancakes, all chasing the best sunny spot, and one loud splash can send the whole pile sliding back into the water at once. Sometimes during courtship, a male will trail just behind a female at the surface, following her like a tiny, silent boat, in hopes she'll accept him. When a hawk's shadow sweeps over the lake, these turtles can vanish in a heartbeat, dropping off the logs so fast that only ripples and a trail of tiny bubbles show where they were. In cold weather, they pull off a wild trick, slowing their bodies way down under the mud and taking in just enough oxygen from the water to stay under for a very long time. As the light softens, the turtles slide back into the water, one by one, leaving Spile Lake calm again, with only a few widening circles to show they were there at all. With the water still and the logs empty, the little lake feels like a gentle pause in Missouri's long sentence. This is Missouri, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Route 66 Forgot, check out this video.